Emma realized she was holding evidence of one of the Cold War's darkest secrets, but also something far worse. Proof that Nazi war criminals had not only survived the fall of their regime, but had successfully manipulated both superpowers into providing resources for experiments that continued their wartime atrocities on an international scale. 88 men from supposed enemy nations had died together, not as soldiers serving their countries, but as unwilling test subjects in experiments that violated every principle of human dignity and international law. Their sacrifice hadn't served American or Soviet interests. It had served the continuation of Nazi medical research under a new, more sophisticated cover. The recording had revealed more than a military cover-up. It exposed the human cost of allowing war criminals to escape justice, of prioritizing political advantage over moral accountability. Men who should have been enemies had chosen cooperation over conflict in their final days, proving that humanity could transcend artificial political boundaries even in the most desperate circumstances. The frozen signal, Arctic submarine mystery. 47 sailors vanished beneath the ice in a single night. No mayday call, no distress signal, just silence that lasted 62 years, until a fisherman's net pulled up something that should have stayed buried forever. If you want to uncover more classified files that governments tried to hide, hit that subscribe button now. The North Sea was unusually calm that October morning when Bjorn Haugen cast his nets off the coast of Tromsø. 30 years he'd fished these waters, never seen anything like what came up with his catch. Twisted metal, barnacle-covered, but the numbers stamped on the side made his blood run cold. USS 4471N, American military designation. Bjorn's hands shook as he pried open a sealed compartment. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, lay a magnetic tape, frozen solid. The label read in faded ink, "Final recording, October 15, 1962. Dr. Emma Nordahl received Bjorn's call 3 days later. As Norway's leading marine archaeologist, she'd investigated dozens of shipwrecks, but this felt different. The dates matched perfectly with a period when NATO conducted secret Arctic exercises. Exercises that officially never happened. Emma's laboratory in Bergen buzzed with anticipation as she carefully thawed the tape. Her assistant warned her about potential damage. 60-year-old magnetic tape rarely survived. But as the ancient reel-to-reel machine whirred to life, a voice crackled through the speakers. American accent. Desperate. Afraid. "This is Captain Lars Eriksson, USS Glacier Wolf, October 15, 1962. If anyone finds this recording, God help us all." But the real shock was yet to come. Emma fast-forwarded through hours of static. Then another voice emerged. Different accent. Russian, maybe. Speaking broken English. "American submarine. We have problem. Ice is not." Natural. The recording revealed something that challenged everything Emma knew about the Cold War. 2 enemy submarines trapped together beneath Arctic ice, working together to survive. Captain Eriksson's voice returned. "The Russians. They're not our enemy down here. The enemy is whatever's keeping us frozen in place." Emma's pulse quickened. She'd studied Cold War naval history extensively. No official records mentioned joint Soviet-American operations. Enemies didn't cooperate. Not in 1962. Not ever. Yet here was proof. The tape continued. "Day 12 beneath the ice. Our nuclear reactor is functioning, but something's wrong with the cooling systems. The water around us, it's not freezing naturally. It's too uniform. Too controlled." Emma paused the recording. Controlled freezing? In 1962? She cross-referenced the coordinates Bjorn had provided. The location matched classified NATO documents she'd accessed through maritime archaeology permits. Project Glacier. A program so secret it appeared in only 3 official files. But what she discovered in those files would haunt her for weeks. Project Glacier wasn't about hiding submarines. It was about preserving them, along with their crews. NATO scientists had developed a process to suspend nuclear submarines in artificially created ice formations. The crews would enter cryogenic sleep. The subs would remain operational but invisible to Soviet sonar. The ultimate Cold War weapon, ghost submarines that could strike from beneath the ice, crewed by men frozen in time. Eriksson's voice grew weaker on the tape. "The injection they gave us, it's not working like they promised. Some of the men aren't waking up from their sleep cycles. And the Russians, their captain says the same thing is happening to his crew." Emma's hands trembled. Human experimentation. During the height of nuclear tension, NATO had turned sailors into test subjects. Frozen soldiers in an underwater war that never officially began. The recording revealed the horrifying truth. Both submarines had been unknowing participants in parallel experiments. American and Soviet scientists secretly collaborating while their governments prepared for nuclear war. "We've been down here 43 days, Erickson continued. "The ice won't break. Our emergency systems are failing, but I've figured out why." Emma held her breath. "We're not in natural ice. We're inside an artificial glacier. Someone built this prison around us, and I think they want us to stay here forever." The tape crackled, static. Then a new voice, calm. Clinical. Speaking with a slight German accent, Phase 3 complete. Subject submarines sealed successfully. Cryogenic preservation initiated. Project Glacier operational. Emma's blood ran cold. The accent sounded familiar. She'd heard it before in declassified Nazi scientific documents. Scientists who disappeared after World War II. Scientists who'd allegedly worked on human preservation experiments. But none of them were supposed to be alive in 1962. The recording jumped forward. Weeks had passed. Erickson's voice returned, but weaker now. Final entry. "The freezing process, it's not preserving us, it's changing us. The Russians tried to surface yesterday. Their captain, he wasn't the same person who went under." Static overwhelmed the tape for several minutes. Then, barely audible, "Tell our families we tried to come home. Tell them the ice. The ice remembers everything." The recording ended with a sound Emma would never forget. 47 voices, American and Russian, singing together in the darkness. A haunting melody that seemed to echo from the depths of frozen time. Emma spent months trying to verify the recording's authenticity. Every test confirmed what she dreaded. It was genuine. But when she approached NATO officials, she encountered a wall of silence. Project Glacier had never existed. The USS Glacier Wolf was never built. Captain Lars Erickson had no military record. Yet the metal fragment in Bjorn's net told a different story. Metallurgical analysis revealed it was constructed with techniques not perfected until 1961. The barnacles covering it were species that only grew in Arctic waters at specific depths. Everything supported the recording's claims. But the most disturbing discovery came when Emma traced the personnel records. 47 American sailors had indeed been transferred to classified Arctic operations in October 1962. Their families received standard military death notifications 6 months later. Training accidents, classified missions. No bodies were ever returned. The same pattern appeared in Soviet naval records, obtained through Emma's contacts in Russian maritime archaeology. 41 Soviet submariners had vanished during the same period. Their families told similar stories. Official notification of death, no funeral, eternal secrecy. Emma realized she was holding evidence of the Cold War's darkest secret. 88 men from enemy nations had died together, forgotten by the world that sent them to their frozen graves. She made a decision that would change her life forever. Emma published her findings in the International Journal of Maritime Archaeology. The response was immediate and terrifying. Government officials from 3 nations demanded she retract her statements. Anonymous callers threatened her research funding. Military historians questioned her credibility. The response was immediate and unprecedented. Government officials from 3 nations simultaneously demanded Emma retract her statements. Anonymous callers threatened her research funding, her academic position, even her personal safety. Military historians questioned her credibility and suggested her evidence had been fabricated. But Emma had prepared for this response. The truth was already beyond their ability to contain. Within days, other researchers began coming forward with supporting evidence. A Russian maritime archaeologist revealed similar recordings found in Baltic Sea excavations. An American historian produced classified documents that corroborated Emma's findings about Operation Paperclip recruitment programs. Norwegian military archives yielded radar reports from 1962 showing unusual submarine activity in the exact coordinates Emma had specified. The wall of official silence began to crack under the weight of accumulated evidence. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source: the families of the lost sailors themselves. Margaret Eriksson, the 84-year-old widow of Captain Lars Eriksson, contacted Emma through her attorney. For 62 years, she had received a military pension and official condolences, but never any details about her husband's death. She had saved every letter he'd written, every photograph, every document related to his naval service. Among those documents was something that changed everything. A letter Lars had given her before his final deployment, with instructions to open it only if he didn't return within 6 months. The letter, written in Lars's handwriting and dated September 1962, revealed that he had suspected something unusual about his Arctic assignment. His orders had come through unofficial channels. His crew had been selected based on medical examinations rather than standard qualifications, and they had been required to sign secrecy agreements that went far beyond normal military classifications. Most importantly, Lars had written down the names of his entire crew, 47 men whose families had been told they died in a training accident, but whose bodies had never been recovered. Margaret Eriksson's revelation opened floodgates of similar stories from families around the world. Soviet Navy families came forward with identical experiences: sudden deployments, unusual medical requirements, secrecy agreements, and death notifications without bodies or funerals. The pattern was undeniable. 88 families had been lied to for over 6 decades about the fate of their loved ones. Emma's investigation led to official acknowledgement of Project Glacier in 2024. Under enormous international pressure, NATO finally released selected documents confirming the existence of joint preservation experiments conducted during the Cold War period. The releases were heavily redacted and limited, but they provided enough official confirmation to validate Emma's findings. Families of the lost sailors finally received the recognition their loved ones deserved. Memorial services were held simultaneously in Norfolk, Virginia, and Severodvinsk, Russia, with Norwegian officials hosting a joint ceremony in Tromsø, where Bjorn had discovered the recording device. Former enemies mourning together. Just as their sons and fathers and husbands had died together beneath the ice 62 years earlier. But the memorials also served another purpose. They were cover for a massive international search and recovery operation in the Arctic. Emma's sonar readings had been confirmed by military assets from multiple nations. The underwater complex beneath the ice was real, operational, and showing increasing signs of activity. International teams were now working around the clock to locate and assess the preserved submarine crews before whatever controlled them could complete their reactivation process. The race was on to reach the USS Glacier Wolf and Red October before their 6-decade sleep ended, and something emerged from the ice that belonged neither to the past nor the present, but to a future that Nazi scientists had designed to begin long after their official deaths. The Arctic keeps its secrets well, but sometimes those secrets refuse to stay buried forever. Sometimes the ice gives back what it was forced to swallow, along with things that were never meant to surface in the modern world. Today, Bjorn Haugen's fishing nets hang in Emma's office as a reminder of how a simple morning catch can expose the darkest chapters of human history. The metal fragment that started everything sits beside them, no longer frozen, no longer silent, but bearing witness to sacrifices that transcended national boundaries and ideological divisions. But late at night, when Emma reviews her research files, she still wonders about the sonar readings that continue to come from beneath the Arctic ice. Movement patterns that suggest something vast and patient, waiting for the right moment to complete a mission that began in the depths of human evil and evolved into something far more dangerous. On calm October mornings off the coast of Tromsø, fishermen occasionally report hearing voices carried on the Arctic wind. 47 American voices and 41 Russian voices, no longer singing German lullabies, but calling out coordinates and technical specifications in languages that blend the past with an uncertain future. The preservation experiment succeeded. The question now is whether humanity can survive what it preserved. But Emma's story was far from over. 3 months after her initial publication, she received a phone call that would force her to confront the true scope of what she had uncovered. The caller identified himself as Dr. James Morrison, former CIA analyst, now 83 years old and living in a retirement community in Virginia. "Dr. Nordahl," Morrison's voice was weak but urgent, "I've been following your research on Project Glacier. There are things you need to know, things that go far beyond what you've discovered." Morrison had worked in CIA intelligence analysis during the 1960s, specifically focusing on Soviet submarine capabilities. But his real assignment, he revealed, had been monitoring a joint American-Soviet research program that officially didn't exist. "We knew about the German scientists," Morrison explained during their secure video call. "We knew they were playing both sides. What we didn't know was the true scale of their operation. Project Glacier wasn't one experiment. It was a proof of concept for something much larger." Morrison had spent decades trying to piece together the full scope of what he'd witnessed during his CIA years. The German scientists hadn't just survived the war. They'd created an international network that transcended Cold War politics. They'd established research facilities on every continent, often using resources from opposing nations simultaneously. The Arctic facility you discovered? There are at least 12 others. Pacific Ocean, Mediterranean Sea, beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, even underground installations in the Sahara Desert. Each one conducting different aspects of the same basic research: human preservation, genetic memory implantation, and behavioral conditioning. Emma felt her world shift as Morrison continued his revelations. "The sailors you found weren't the only test subjects. There were civilians, entire families who volunteered for medical research programs in exchange for financial compensation. Scientists, military personnel, even political prisoners from multiple countries. Thousands of people, all preserved in various facilities around the world." But Morrison's most disturbing revelation was yet to come. The German scientists weren't working for any government. They were building something new. A post-national organization designed to survive any political upheaval, any war, any catastrophe. They called it the Continuation Protocol. The Continuation Protocol, according to Morrison's research, was based on the premise that human civilization was inherently unstable and would eventually destroy itself through warfare, environmental collapse, or social breakdown. The German scientists had decided to preserve the best specimens of humanity in artificial hibernation, along with carefully curated genetic memories and technical knowledge, ready to rebuild civilization according to their specifications once the current world order collapsed. They weren't trying to win the Cold War, Morrison explained. They were preparing for what came after it, and after whatever comes next, an eternal backup system for human civilization, with themselves as the architects of humanity's future. Emma realized that Project Glacier represented just one small piece of a global preservation network that had been operating in secret for over 70 years. The reactivation signals her sonar equipment had detected weren't random system failures. They were coordinated responses to some kind of trigger condition. Morrison provided Emma with coordinates for 3 other suspected sites: a deep-sea installation off the coast of Japan, an underground facility beneath the Swiss Alps, and a hidden complex in the Australian outback. Each location showed similar patterns of unusual seismic activity and electromagnetic emissions. "Something is waking them up," Morrison said. All of them, simultaneously. Emma spent the following weeks coordinating with international research teams to investigate Morrison's coordinates. What they found confirmed her worst fears: a global network of preservation facilities, all showing signs of synchronized reactivation after decades of dormancy. The Japanese site contained evidence of preserved submarine crews from both Japanese and American vessels that had disappeared during the Pacific theater of World War II. The Swiss facility held what appeared to be European scientists and military personnel from multiple nations. The Australian installation seemed focused on civilian populations. Entire communities that had vanished during various natural disasters throughout the 20th century. But the most shocking discovery came from analysing the communication patterns between the facilities. They weren't just waking up randomly, they were coordinating with each other using advanced encryption protocols that shouldn't have existed in the 1960s when they were supposedly constructed. The German scientists had built their network with technology far more advanced than anything officially available during the Cold War period, which raised a terrifying question. If they had access to such sophisticated systems decades before they appeared in mainstream science, what other capabilities had they developed in secret? Emma's investigation took a dramatic turn when she received a message that seemed to come from the preserved facilities themselves. The communication arrived through multiple channels simultaneously: encrypted emails, radio transmissions, even messages delivered by courier to her office, all containing identical text. Dr. Nordahl, your research has been noted. The continuation protocol requires your participation. Report to coordinate 78 2° 50.8° E within 72 hours. Compliance is necessary. Resistance is futile. The future belongs to those who planned for it. The coordinates led to a location in the Arctic Ocean, not far from where Bjorn had found the original recording device. Emma realized that her investigation had attracted the attention of whatever intelligence was coordinating the global reactivation process. She faced an impossible choice: ignore the summons and risk whatever consequences the preserved network might impose, or travel to the Arctic and confront directly the forces she had been investigating from a distance. Emma chose confrontation. Working with Norwegian maritime authorities and international research teams, Emma organized an expedition to the specified coordinates. The team included marine archaeologists, military specialists, communications experts, and Morrison himself, who insisted on participating despite his advanced age. "I've been waiting 60 years to see what they built," Morrison told Emma as their icebreaker approached the coordinates. "I'm not going to miss it now." What they found beneath the Arctic ice exceeded even Emma's expanded understanding of the continuation protocol's scope. The underwater complex wasn't just a preservation facility, it was a fully operational city. Kilometers of corridors, laboratories, living quarters, and control centers, all maintained by automated systems that had functioned flawlessly for decades. And at the center of it all, thousands of preservation chambers containing human beings from every era of the 20th century. But the most shocking discovery was waiting in the Central Command Center. Dr. Klaus Richter himself, preserved but conscious, maintained in a state of partial animation that allowed him to oversee the entire global network while remaining technically frozen in time. Richter appeared to be in his 40s, despite being born in 1903. The preservation technology had not only kept him alive for over a century, but had maintained him at his physical and intellectual peak. When Emma's team entered the command center, he greeted them as if he had been expecting their arrival. "Dr. Nordahl," Richter spoke in perfect English with only a slight German accent, "welcome to the future. You have seen our work from the outside. Now you will understand our purpose from within." Richter explained that the continuation protocol had evolved far beyond its original conception. The preserved individuals weren't just backup populations waiting for civilization to collapse. They were active participants in guiding human development from behind the scenes. Every major conflict, every technological breakthrough, every social transformation of the past 70 years has been influenced by our network, Richter revealed. We do not control human events, but we guide them toward outcomes that serve long-term species survival. The preserved submarine crews, Emma learned, were just one category of assets in a vast human resources database. Scientists preserved at the moment of critical discoveries. Military leaders captured at the peak of their strategic thinking. Artists, philosophers, and visionaries maintained in a state where their creativity could be accessed and applied to problems they never could have imagined during their original lifetimes. "The Cold War served our purposes perfectly," Richter continued. "Competition between superpowers accelerated technological development while providing cover for our preservation operations. Now that era has ended, but new challenges require new responses." Ritter gestured toward banks of monitors showing global data feeds, climate change indicators, population growth projections, resource depletion statistics, geopolitical tension measurements. Human civilization approaches multiple crisis points simultaneously. The time for passive preservation has ended. Active intervention is now required. Emma realized that the global reactivation process wasn't random system failure or scheduled awakening. It was the continuation protocol's response to calculated threat assessments. The preserved populations were being activated because current conditions matched parameters that triggered emergency protocols established decades earlier. "You have two choices, Dr. Nordahl," Richter concluded. "Join our network and help guide humanity through its coming trials, or return to the surface and watch helplessly as your species stumbles toward extinction without proper guidance." But Emma had discovered something that Richter apparently didn't know. The preserved individuals weren't just following programmed instructions. Many of them had retained enough of their original personalities to question the continuation protocol's methods and objectives. During her exploration of the facility, Emma had encountered several preserved subjects who expressed doubts about the network's goals. Captain Lars Eriksson, still preserved but occasionally conscious, had managed to communicate his continued opposition to the experimental program that had trapped him. "They think they're saving humanity," Eriksson had whispered during a brief moment of clarity, "but they're trying to replace it with something else entirely. Something that serves their vision instead of human choice." Emma realized that the continuation protocol faced internal resistance from its own preserved populations. The human spirit that had allowed American and Soviet submarine crews to cooperate despite ideological differences was still alive within the network, challenging the German scientists' assumptions about behavioral conditioning and memory manipulation. Armed with this knowledge, Emma made her choice. She would not join Richter's network, but neither would she simply return to the surface and wait for whatever intervention the protocol planned to implement. Instead, she would expose the entire global operation and give humanity the information needed to make its own choices about its future. "Dr. Richter," Emma said, facing the preserved Nazi scientist who had manipulated world events for over 70 years, "humanity doesn't need your guidance. It needs freedom to choose its own path, even if that path includes mistakes and failures. What happened next would determine not just Emma's fate, but the future of human civilization itself. If you found this expanded revelation about the global continuation protocol as disturbing as I did, share this story. The world needs to know that some of history's darkest figures may still be influencing events from the shadows, and that the choices we make today could determine whether humanity remains free to choose its own destiny. The Arctic ice has given up its secrets, but the real question now is what humanity will do with the truth."